on one hand to support Flemish exporters to find new markets in other regions, other countries, and on the other hand, FIT also promotes Flanders as an invest location for companies, foreign companies who would like to establish a presence in this wonderful region. So we have a network of around 90 offices all around the world, and the office in Hungary, in Budapest, is located in Radai Street. We are there with two colleagues, myself and my assistant, Dora Hegedűs. They are always available for you to have if you are interested in business opportunities in Flanders. Today's webinar, we will focus on presenting Flanders as a fantastic location for startups and scale-ups. So you will hear about the ecosystem of startups and scale-ups in Flanders. You will get advices and tips on how to access the Flemish market, and not only the Flemish market, but also the Benelux market and even beyond the countries around the Benelux. We are expecting around 40 participants today, so we are still waiting for a few to join. Meanwhile, I would like to give a very warm welcome to His Excellency Siegfried Peinen, Ambassador of Belgium to Hungary, and I would also like to greet, if she has already joined, but not yet, the Belgian Business Club in Budapest. That's actually, for those who don't know yet, Belgabiz, the Belgian Business Club. It's a very lively community of Belgian companies based in Hungary, Belgians based in Hungary, and also Hungarian companies who are interested in Belgium. So if you have the same interest, then do not hesitate to join the club. You are always very welcome there. And I hope you can get a website and contact from the representative of the club in the chat. So I will keep this intro very short, but just before we start, a few technical advices to make this webinar running smoothly. I would like to ask everyone to switch off the camera and to mute the microphone during the presentations. After the presentations, we will have a Q&A session where the speakers can answer all the questions. During the presentations, you can put your question into the chat, and during the Q&A, so after the presentation, you can be a bit more interactive, and there you can also raise your hand and ask the question yourself if you would like to. So now I think we can start with the presentations. I will give the floor to our first speaker, Mr. Péter Hőnyi, Managing Director of StartItX Hungary, who will give us a welcome speech. So the floor is yours, Peter.
Hey guys, thank you, Sonia. Thank you for the warm welcome. I will keep this short as well, so we can move on to the more interesting people. My name is Peter. I'm from StartItX at K&H. If you don't know StartItX, we are a no-share, no-equity incubator here in Hungary. We have two offices, one in Budapest and one in Győr, with 30 active teams. We offer a one-year program, incubation program, to the selected startups for absolutely free, offering mentoring, networking, office space, and so on. If you want to hear more on that, feel free to reach out to me basically anywhere. To move closer to today's topic, when Hungarian startups are thinking on stepping on an international market, which will come sooner or later, since this is a small country with an even smaller purchasing power, Belgium and Flanders might not be on the top of that list, or might not be on that list at all, because of the language barrier, the lack of network, and the lack of examples from Hungarian startups and scale-ups. But we are basically here today to give you an idea and to help you on that, to show that Belgium and the Benelux states as a whole might be a better option than you might think, especially with with the help of the organizations that we have here today, with Fit Agency, with StartItX, or with the Belgian Business Club here in Hungary. So again, if you need any help, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. You will find my contact information in the slides. And let's not wait any longer. I'll give you the floor back to you, Sonia, and I hope everyone has a great time.
Okay, thank you, Peter, for your welcoming words. I know that StartItX at K&H is doing a great job, and you have a very good link to Belgium. So it's a great opportunity for Hungarian startups as well to get closer to Belgian opportunities. So I can encourage everyone to use this link even more actively in the future. And thanks for your work, Peter. So the next presentation will be about basically a general picture about the scale-up and startup scheme and the ecosystem in Flanders. So you will get some advices on what kind of subsidies and cooperation opportunities there are in Flanders. I will give the floor to my colleague, Olivier van Oerschoven, who is Deputy Director for Inward Investments Europe at Flanders Investment Trade. Olivier, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sonia. I'm just opening my presentation. I hope you can all see my presentation. Okay, welcome. Good afternoon. So my name is Olivier van Oerschoven, and I'm responsible for inward investments from Europe and global acquisition for startups. Before we start, let's set the scene. Where is Flanders located? Flanders is the northern region of Belgium. As you know, we are a federal state, and we have 3 independent regions. Flanders is one of them in the north. We're right in the middle of a very interesting economic area. 60% of the European purchasing power is within a 500-kilometer range around Flanders. And of course, we also have in Brussels the European Union institutions and the NATO, which also gives certain opportunities for companies and to do business. On the startup scene, we're actually located in the middle of 4 startup super hubs: Amsterdam, Berlin, Paris, London. They're all very close to us. And you can actually visit those hubs within a day. You can have meetings there within a day, but at the same time, you don't pay the expensive location. You can see that on the right side, which gives us actually an advantage to the huge startup hubs around us. Quite expensive, a lot of competition there. But in Flanders, we can give you an alternative. Setting up your business in our region is quite easy. It takes 4 days to set up your business, and then you have your company. So things can go really fast if you would like to do business very fast. In the next few slides, I will actually focus on 4 startup pillars who are quite important when you internationalize. When you internationalize your startup, you're always looking actually for one of those 4 pillars. You're looking for access to market or an access to technology, or both. Of course, also you need some talent and of course funding to grow. And I will just go in detail in each one of those pillars. So let's start with access to market. I can be very short on this slide because Mathilde, the next speaker, will elaborate on it. But actually, if you look at our position in Europe, it's quite unique because we're right in the middle of a Roman, Anglo-Saxon, and Nordic German cultures. Also, all regions with different business cultures. So actually, our companies, our ecosystem is used to work in a very complex business situation. That makes actually our market unique. It's not a surprise that the Belgian market is for many companies also a test market, a pilot market, just because we have access to different European cultures. Of course, we also have a very globalized economy with the second largest port in Europe. We have the second largest petrochemical cluster in the world and the largest in Europe, by the way. We also are a life science R&D powerhouse. I will come to that a little bit later. And like I said, of course, we have Brussels as EU capital, which gives certain opportunities. Access to technology and innovation. This is the second pillar, and this is quite important actually, because innovation is a key element in the economic structure of Flanders. And that's actually quite logic because we're not very big, 6 million inhabitants, so we're quite small. And honestly, we don't have the space anymore to build the next mega car factory. What we do have is very good universities, an extremely good educational system, and we have actually our brains. And that's the basis to be innovative. And you see that in the overall innovation performance index of Europe. You see that Belgium has a very strong position just behind the typical Nordic countries who are perceived as very innovative, but you see we're very close behind. Like I said, universities are a key element in our ecosystem. As you can see, we have 5 big universities in our region, and actually with the University of Leuven, or 4 of them at least, are in the top 100 as the most innovative universities in Europe. Leuven ranks even at the #1 position. But having universities is of course one thing. You can do a lot of research at universities, but how accessible are they for business? Well, for that purpose, we actually created 4 strategic research centers. VIB. VIB is a biotech research center. Flanders Make, that's manufacturing, robotics, for instance. Vito is an R&D center for energy, materials, environment. It's one of the largest in the world, by the way. And IMEC around digital technology, micro and nanotechnology, semiconductors. It's one of the most famous research center in this area. For every mobile phone you have today, you can be sure that there is at least one patent of IMEC inside. It's not a surprise that we always, every day, we welcome large companies like Samsung, Philips, LG. They actually are performing R&D in one of those strategic research centers. Those strategic research centers are also very accessible for startups. They all created their own accelerator programs, incubation programs, and also there we are on the top on a top list. If you look at the incubator for IMEC, for instance, we are #3 in the world top 5 university business accelerators. So it's R&D, but it's accessible for young companies. It's accessible for business and entrepreneurs like all of you. Next to those large R&D centers, we also have built a huge cluster system. And a cluster is very important for startups. A cluster is actually a facilitator. It's an organization, and it's a facilitator between industry, the universities, the academic world, and the government. And via that cluster, you have access to companies, to potential clients, to potential partners to work with. And we have 81 clusters in Flanders now, and this is actually our main goal. This is my goal. This is the goal of this is the task of my colleagues. This is the task of Sonia, actually to bring you in contact with one of those clusters. And once you're in those clusters, you're able to have contact with all the big companies, with academic people, and with certain government institutions that might be interest of you. So it's not a surprise, and thanks to those cluster system and and the fact that we have such strong R&D centers who makes the academic world and the innovations in our region accessible, it's not a surprise that we're actually a top 2 player in Europe. Normally we're number 1, but in 2024 it's actually the first time that we are actually on the 2nd place. But that means innovation linkages means that as a company you have very easy and very direct access to innovation and to large R&D centers. And this is actually quite unique because it can speed up your process on the technology level. So that's access to technology. Let's go to the next pillar, and that's access to talent. And this is something which is quite obvious when you have one of the best educational systems in the world and you have such strong universities and R&D centers as we have. It's not a surprise that we also have a very strong and talented workforce. Number 8 in the world for maths, for instance, number 11 for science literacy, number 10 in reading skills. And also on the language side, we really don't have issues. In Flanders, we're Dutch speaking, but of course, most of us also speak French because that's our 2nd language. And English is also a very common language because thanks to the NATO, thanks to the large international companies we have in Flanders, English is a quite common language for us. And beside all those academic work, we also have very strong management schools, which might be interesting if you're looking people, not only R&D people, but if you're also looking for people on the management side for the commercial empowerment of your startup. What about funding? That's of course also very important. We do it actually quite well. Belgium is not a really big country. We have 11 million inhabitants, so we're not that big. But if we look at the figures of the money that our startups are raising, it's quite impressive. Last year, we surpassed the 1 billion euro mark, and only 6 other countries in Europe are, by the way, raising more than 1 billion a year for their startups. And that's actually, and since 2020 in COVID times, we are actually one of those countries in Europe. If we even include the biotech investments, Flanders is very strong in biotech, by the way. We're absolutely a worldwide top-notch sector for us. If we add the biotech investment, then we even raised more than 2 billion in 2020. That means actually that we have a very good structure to raise money, and that we know how to do it. And that's very important because if you are able to raise that kind of money, it means that you're on the radar of many VCs worldwide. What type of funding mechanisms do we have in Flanders? We have actually very good mechanisms until Series B. Most of the companies we have now in Belgium are going for seed company and Series A. For our Series B, we can rely on a lot of international VCs. I give you a small overview a little bit later. But once you go for a Series C and D, then you really have to go to the super hubs like London, or you have to go to the States. But actually the foundation to find investments are really strong in Flanders. So we're really on the radar of many VCs because they know that there is a lot of innovation in our region, like I explained a little bit earlier. So we do have a very strong funding mechanism in our region, which is quite easily accessible. If we look at the top investors in our region, on the left side, you have the Belgian Flemish investors. BMV is, by the way, that's our own. That's a government-owned investment company, by the way. I explain a little bit later. And on the right-hand side, you have a good overview of all the international VCs who are quite active in our region. And as you can see, those are really big players. You have access to quite big players like Index Ventures, which you might know as one of the early investors of Facebook. So you see a lot of UK, French, US, Swiss, Dutch, of course, international VCs are very active in our region, and also there we can introduce you and make the right connections. Here I come back to actually the number one VC in Flanders, and that's actually PMV. And that's if you have a site visit or you're interested in our region, we always introduce you to PMV, because PMV is a government-owned investment company. They act as an investment company. They expect that you do business, of course. So it's not because it's a government that they are that you can do whatever you want. They act as a VC. But of course, it's a government VC. That means that it's a very reliable VC, and they always go for the long term. So they focus more on the growth you have in our region, how many people that you hire, how successful that you are, because the more successful you are in our region, the more people that you hire in our region. That's of course very interesting for our ecosystem. So PMV might be a very good first step. A lot of VCs, by the way, they love it when you have PMV among their ranks, because it's a very stable VC. Beside equity, by the way, PMV also has a large list of subordinated loans, schemes, etc., guarantee loans to the banks. They have a very strong startup scheme for young companies like yours, and to kickstart actually your company. Right. Let's have a good overview of how the landscape of the startup landscape looks like in our region. That was a little bit too fast. First of all, we have quite a large startup ecosystem. We are the 5th most valuable ecosystem in the EU, the 7th in Europe, if we count UK and Swiss as well. In total, we have a value of 40.8 billion euros in 2020. We only are 3 months further in 21. We are now already at 43 billion euros in valuation, so things can go really fast. But as you can see, we have a very strong position, and we're even bigger than those countries who are known as strong startup nations like Denmark, for instance, like Finland, Ireland, Portugal. Even we can be very proud of ourselves that the value of our own startup ecosystem is even larger than those countries, which means that our ecosystem is very active, and that we have a very strong basic and a very strong structure to guide to startups and to bring them to a certain success. Okay, what kind of startups do we have? 43% are early stage startups, which mean less than 3 years. And then we have 38% is scale-ups. And of course, that is growing every year, because our ecosystem is becoming more mature every year. And as you can see, we only have 8% in that pool. Those are the typical zombie companies, which is extremely low, because there is a very good follow-up on our startups. And when we see then there is no growth anymore, we try to do everything to kickstart them again. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and okay, do something else, start a new company. So you see that there is actually the renewal of startups is quite active in the region. We are a B2B nation. We are very small. We don't have a huge domestic market like Spain, like France, or like Germany and UK. So it's not a surprise that we have very strong B2B startups. By the way, together with Ireland, we have the most B2B startups in Europe. Today, 70%, and it's quite stable. Most of our startups go via, or they start actually via accelerators and incubators. And there you see a nice list of the most active incubators. And more than 50% of our startups are actually incubated in one of those incubator and accelerator schemes. And as you can see, StartItX KBC is one of the biggest. And you're quite lucky, because the next speaker, Mathilde, is actually a member of StartItX KBC, so it's a good head start in the next presentation. And before I end, I have a small view on what kind of technologies we have in our region. What are the top 5 industries? Of course, that's health tech. That has to do with the strong biotech, the strong university hospitals and the big pharmas we have in our region. So it's not a surprise that health tech is a very strong industry sector in the startup scene. And if we look at the technologies, then we see that we're very strong in software as a service. Also artificial intelligence, also not a surprise, because since as a B2B oriented startup ecosystem, it's not a surprise that we're very strong there. What can we offer from the Flemish government? For the Flemish government, and that's something we offer to all our startups, even if you're an Hungarian startup with a branch in Flanders, you can have access to this package. We created actually a package to kickstart startups. First of all, when you set up your company, the next day you have access to more than 75,000 euro growth subsidies. Those are subsidies that you can use to internationalize your company. So you can set up your company in Flanders, you would like to go to Germany, or you would like to go to the Nordics. We can actually help you with those subsidies. We support you in hiring export managers, international business development managers, for instance. Your first employee, you never pay social contributions, so it's quite important for your investment, that you can keep it in the company and that you don't have to pay taxes on it. Also, as an expat, we have tax-free allowances, might be very interesting. And of course, once you're landed in Flanders, you can rely on the free advice and the support of my colleagues. Like Sonia already mentioned, we're active in 90 countries. We have 170 business advisors worldwide. We have more than 10 technology attachés worldwide, specialized in health tech, digital tech, climate tech. We have people in Boston, we have people in Silicon Valley, we have people in Singapore, we have people in Tokyo, who are actually not only helping you on the business side, but also they can look for you for technology partners and technology connections. That's the support we deliver on the business side of for your startup, but also on the R&D side, we can support you heavily. First of all, with a lot of subsidies to cover your R&D projects, to cover IT projects, for instance, and that's per project. Can go up to 3 million a project if you have a very good project. A very interesting one is the 85 exemption on your net earnings. So when you have income via license, which might happen when you have a SaaS company and you have a copyright, for instance, 85% of the net earnings that you have from your licenses are exempted for tax, which might be very interesting, because in a very ideal scenario, you only pay 3.7% taxes, for instance, on your net income, which might be very welcome when you have a very young company. And of course, also for your R&D personnel, when you have R&D personnel in Flanders, you don't pay 80% of your taxes on the payments of those people. Actually, those 3 elements are actually the basis for and the reason why all the big pharma have large R&D centers in Flanders. That's actually the reason, because of those 3 subsidy schemes we have in Flanders. So that was my introduction to the startup ecosystem in Flanders. Of course, you can always contact my colleague Sonia afterwards if you would like to have more information on those typical startup on this typical startup package, or on other questions about our ecosystem. So I'm happy to give the floor back to Sonia.
Yeah, thank you very much, Olivier, for this very comprehensive overview. So Flanders is a small region, but it's one of the most innovative ones. So indeed, even the fact that it's a small region, I think that's an advantage, because it's much easier to reach out to the right partners, to the right people, and there is much closer, better cooperation in a smaller community, a smaller ecosystem. So now you heard a lot of arguments why it's good to choose Flanders as a location to grow, to scale, and it's time now to give the floor to the next speaker, Matilda Guterres, who is Head of Sales Ups at StartItX. Matilda will share with you advices and tips on how to access the market, and also she will present you all the services that StartItX has to offer for scale-ups. Matilda, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sonia. I'm uploading my presentation. I hope it works. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Matilda Guterres. I'm the head of sales for scale-ups at StartItX. StartItX is part of StartItX KBC and KBC Bank and Insurance, one of the leading banks in Belgium. Indeed, we already talked about StartItX K&H, or a sister organization in Hungary. We talked about why Flanders, why Benelux region for startups and scale-ups. But I would love to share one word on how you can do that. So how to enter new markets and the art of scaling abroad. What I would love to share with you is, first of all, what we learned from talking with a lot of scaling companies, because we can have our own idea of how a startup or a scale-up from outside of Belgium should come to Belgium or should scale, but it's always best to talk with companies that have done so. And then I would love to shed some light on the traditional approach of scaling and on the value, the often underestimated value of a warm introduction and a good network. And afterwards, I would love to introduce you to our Land and Expand program and how we would advise you or help you with entering the Benelux region and scaling abroad. So first of all, a year and a half ago, we had a lot of scale-up talks with different scale-ups, and then we're doing it still today. From a day-to-day basics, we're talking with scale-ups, and we ask them, can you share a little bit more about your scaling journey? What were the pain points? Was it difficult? Was it different when entering Belgium, when entering Germany or entering France? And actually the results, they shocked us a little bit because we thought it was not that difficult. But what we heard was entering new markets is actually the hardest. Even if you are in 5 markets, for example, the 6th one can take you by surprise and will take you by surprise again. New market entry is often slower than anticipated. And if you have to do cold outreach from abroad into a new market, and if you have to do prospection, it is often very costly and time consuming. And that has got us thinking. Is this traditional approach of entering new markets the right one? Because what we learned from these scale-ups was that often the scaling team or the sales team has had to start from scratch. And often it takes more than 12 months, 2 full-time employees in the region, a cost of about 150,000 euros to enter this region. And after 12 months, no guaranteed meetings. You talk with a lot of people, but maybe with the wrong people. You have no actual real advice on the local market. You have no real market insight. What types of companies should I approach now? What types of companies should I maybe wait, nudge a little bit, or talk with in Q1 or Q2 of the year that I want to approach them? So we realized that this traditional approach comes with a lot of difficulties, and that therefore maybe some companies are a bit averse to scaling to the Benelux region or scaling abroad in general. That got us thinking, and we thought, okay, how can we fix this? What can we do about this? And what could help these companies that have no idea what is going on in the Benelux region with entering new markets? We realized that a strategy for scaling is often an utopia or an illusion, a strategy on a whiteboard with let's first go to Germany, let's then go to France, and if everything goes well, let's then go to the Benelux region, for example. That is often an illusion, that is often not working. We realize that scaling often is a very opportunistic activity. If you have someone in your board that has connections in Germany, then you'll probably go to Germany. And if there's low-hanging fruit in France, then you'll switch course or change course to France. And we realized that's not because of strategy, that's not because of any other reason, but it is purely because of opportunistic reasons and the value of a strong network and a warm introduction. I here for you highlighted 4 reasons why we believe that a strong network and a warm introduction is valuable when entering new markets. First of all, the introductions are with the right people in the right companies and at the right time. So you will have the right leads that you need at that stage, and you will not lose time with leads that are very interested in what you're doing, but actually have no real intention of purchasing your product or working with you as a partner in the long run. You have quality time. What do I mean with quality time is that a warm introduction makes for a credible and a serious opportunity to get to know the company. Because if you are introduced by someone that is already well experienced in a specific sector, he or she will open his or her personal network, and the lead that the person will bring will be considered as valuable and serious. And they will not have the feeling that they're wasting their time, and you get a real opportunity to talk about your business and to talk about doing business with your lead. A third benefit of a strong network and a warm introduction is market intelligence. You can have a lot of consulting companies, and no offense to consulting companies, you can do a lot of market research on your own, but via a strong network and with the right people, you get to know the real ins and outs of the market and of specific companies in a very efficient way. Because you can just give a phone call and ask, okay, this lead, how are they doing? Can we approach them, yes or no? And how should we approach them? And I think a fourth benefit of this network is a shortcut in time and money. If we, let's say, take the 2 full-time employees that I mentioned earlier, and these 2 full-time employees are placed in Belgium to do market prospection and to explore the market, they can be very professional and very good at what they do, but it will take them 5, 6, or maybe 7 months to really get to know the market and maybe have 1 or 2 sales qualified leads established. After 1 year, the 2 full-time employees, you have actually no idea how many executive meetings maybe they will be able to arrange. You have no idea how many doors they would have opened. When you work with that warm introduction and with that network, you actually take a shortcut in time. And in 4 months, you could have 10 doors opened at the right time and with the right company. And that's a bit our philosophy that we want to share with you today. That's why I want to share with you our land and expand program. So we talk now about the traditional approach of entering new markets, the difficulties of entering new markets, this warm introduction. How do we now merge it all into one formula? Our land and expand program consists of 4 parts, let's say. So the first part is we want to get to know your company, your scaling ambitions, who is for you a sales qualified lead, and who in the company do you want to talk to? Is it the CEO? Is it the head of product? Is it the head of digital? This varies a lot across companies, because every scale-up or every startup has its very specific needs. Once we establish that we know your goals, we want to find the right expertise in the team to help you. We have expertise in many different areas, and I will come back to that later. But we want to get you the right sector expert or the right expertise to support you in your scaling journey. Once we have that all established, we want to get you connected. And this is literally us giving you warm introductions at executive level with the companies that we think are valuable for you, and booking meetings in your agenda and giving you the time to talk with the right prospects. And our goal with this land and expand program is actually that after a time frame of 3 to 6 months, we want to hand over a warm sales pipeline and give you the opportunity to explore more opportunities or success stories in this region. So your sales team does not have to start from scratch. They don't need 12 months to get to know this market, a market that is quite complex, as Olivier as well mentioned. We want to give you a warm sales pipeline to start with and actually give you a shortcut and a kickstart in this region. I hear you probably thinking, who are they? Why do they claim that they have this network? Why do they claim that they can give us warm introductions at any company that we maybe want? As mentioned before, StartItX is part of Started at KBC. Started at KBC is the largest startup accelerator in Belgium. We have already had over 1,000 companies, over 3,000 entrepreneurs. We have different partners and mentors in our network, and we are a selected member of the Global Accelerator Network. And on top of that, we have 8 co-working hubs in Belgium. One in Brussels, the European capital, which is always good. And Started at KBC is then, on their turn, part of the KBC Bank and Insurance, one of the leading banks in Belgium. Our StartItX team consists of 7 full-time members, but we also have, we call it a satellite team of 5 people now working for us globally. And therefore our geographical reach can go from Belgium to Netherlands and Luxembourg, so the Benelux as a whole, but sometimes further. If the sector expert or the person with the right connections has connections that expand the borders of the Benelux region, then probably your network will go further than that. A little bit more on that global presence to end with. We have clients now from the Nordics, we have clients from US, we have clients from Israel, we have clients in Asia. We have several partners. FIT is one of them, and I'm very happy to be cooperating with FIT, also the host of this webinar today, all over the world, and our satellite team that is also globally well present. If you would have any more questions, concerns, you can always reach out to either Lode, the CEO and the founder of Started at KBC and StartItX, Kjell, he is the mastermind behind the art of scaling up, or me, the one that builds the connections between the global or the international scale-ups and then the StartItX team and the corporates here in Belgium. I would love to give the floor back to Sonia. I think now it's time for a good Q&A, and I'm very curious about the questions that you have for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matilda. Thank you very much for your very useful advice and for this nice overview. I know that your work has been very successful so far, so you have a lot of companies who managed to scale with success thanks to the help of StartItX. You have a great team there, so I can only encourage everyone to look into the services and establish a good cooperation with StartItX. So now, before we shift to the Q&A session, I would like just to inform you that the session has been recorded, so you will get the link to the session in a follow-up email afterwards. We will also send you the PowerPoint presentations and the contact of the speakers, so you can always get into touch with us. And now I'm looking at the questions. I see one question so far, which I will ask. I don't know which one of our speakers could maybe give an answer. The question is, could you suggest a logistics-focused conference? Which city is the largest logistics center? Is there anyone who would like to answer this question? Then I will give you the opportunity.
Yeah, maybe I can give a short answer to that. Yeah, the largest logistical center in Flanders is by far the port of Antwerp, of course. I mean, it's one of the largest in the world, and it also has a huge chemical cluster. So that's our by far our largest logistical center we have. But it depends a little bit on what you're looking for, because if you're more looking for the ro-ro transport, then you can go to the coast, to Zeebrugge, for instance. We also have the largest car port in Europe. Then Zeebrugge has a lot of logistical activity, and when you go to the east, there we have a lot of warehousing, because that's Yeah, actually, that's the warehousing area, which is used by many suppliers for the German industry. So by far Antwerp, but it depends a little bit on what type of logistics you're looking for.
Okay, thank you, Olivier. I see another question from Mark Engelhardt with regard to COVID. Is it easy to create a company in, I guess, in Flanders online? What is the best format? Is there capital requirement? Who would like to answer this question?
That depends a little bit on, again, what you're looking for. It's easy to set up a company. The capital requirements when you set up a BV, which is actually a small company, let's say, then officially your capital requirement is 18,000 euros, so 18,000 euros, but you only have to fulfill 6,000 euros on the account when you set up the company. Is it nowadays easy to set up a company? Yeah, you can actually call an accountant, because in Belgium you're allowed to mandate an accountant to set up the company. The only issue is that you have to sign for a bank account, and that's something you have to do in person. And that's the only issue we have today for COVID. But the rest can be done online or via your accountant.
Okay, thank you, Olivier. So this was how to set up a company in Flanders, because I see in the chat it's written Netherlands, but of course we meant Flanders. So one more question from the same participant. Are there any regulations on crypto companies? That's a very specific question. I don't know if someone can answer that. If not, then we will answer later on in an email. We will try to get information on
yeah,
that.
It's indeed something we have to check, because I have no experience with that. Actually, as far as I know, I don't know any regulation about crypto companies so far, but we have to look into it. I have no idea.
I maybe want to come back to that, Mark, if that's okay. I was talking about our expertise in our network, so I think we will have someone, and we have someone that is very good or very well connected in fintech, and she can come back to your question. So maybe after this webinar, we can have a talk about that.
Okay, thank you, Matilda. So now, if I don't see more questions in the chat, but if you would like to speak up, or you can raise your hand and ask your question. You don't have to write it down. I don't know if there are any questions. We wait for a little bit still. If no one has a question anymore, then we will now close the session. I would like to say thank you to the speakers for joining us. A very big thank you to my colleagues at FIT headquarters as well, who helped to prepare this webinar. And of course, thank you to all the participants who joined us today. Thanks for listening to these presentations. I hope that you found this session interesting and inspiring. So as I said, you will get all our contact details. Please do not hesitate to come back to us with questions. We are here available for you later on as well, and we will be more than happy to help you if you are interested in Flanders, in establishing a presence in Flanders, or anything related to startup scale-up. And thank you very much, and stay safe, take care, keep healthy. Bye-bye.